Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to speak with Ruth Podolin, who is a member of Haddonfield Monthly Meeting. She lives at Medford Lees in Medford, New Jersey. And we'll also be speaking with Emily Blanck, who is a member of Mickleton Meeting, and she lives in Glassboro, New Jersey. Traditionally, Quakers did not celebrate Christmas or other holidays because they believed that every day should be holy. However, over time, things have changed. And so we want to start by talking a little bit about how Quakers moved from not celebrating Christmas to gradually adopting some of the traditions in the broader culture. Ruth, would you share with us what it was like growing up for you?
Yes, I'd like to. I grew up in rural Oklahoma. Both of my parents were from Iowa and had been Quakers for many generations, their families. My father was from a pastoral Friends Church, which is more common in the Midwest. And my mother had grown up in Iowa Conservative Meeting, which was an unprogrammed kind of worship, which is what they came to prefer, and which I prefer. My folks worked with the Kickapoo Indians for the Quaker Indian Service Committee. And when I was growing up, I have no memory of ever celebrating Christmas. We just didn't talk about it. I think the little community church that we had maybe passed out candy. I kind of remember something about candy. but as far as a celebration of Christmas, that just wasn't a part of what we did. As my mother explained to me later when we talked about this, that it had been as Linda said, every day is as holy as any other. So neither Christmas nor Easter really played into any of my memories. Also, she went on to explain that Quakers also, or her yearly meeting, believed that Christmas actually had been at one time a Roman holiday. And when the Roman Empire became Christian, they didn't want to give up that holiday. So they just sort of supplanted the Christmas story on it. So that was the reasoning behind it. And since you don't miss what you don't have, I didn't notice we didn't have Christmas until, I suppose, when I was going to school, I began to hear a little bit about it, although I don't think it wasn't the commercial thing it has become now, back in the 40s when I was growing up. So it was probably when we had our own children that we began, again, being kind of influenced, or pressure was put on from the outside world, and we began having a Christmas tree. We always pretty much made Christmas tree decorations. It was nice, the kids were making them in school too. And those actually, I think, make up the big part of what I know my grandchildren's families use, are the things that they've made up over the years, which have a lot of memories. But it's, little trinkets and things with their handprints and pictures of them and whatever. Our own Christmas tree happens to be decorated with mostly pine cones tied with red ribbons, which I made probably 3 or 4 decades ago, because we used to actually go up skiing over the Christmas holidays, and we could take those very easily with us. But I have the same old pine cones, and I love them. I've added to it some white shells tied with white ribbons, and the contrast is nice. But as far as the gifts and the commercialization, I've always found that very, not repugnant, but something that we've tried to stay away from. I think when the children were little, I'm sure we got specific gifts and things for them. As time has gone on, we've developed what we call in our family the Christmas exchange. Everybody buys one present that's kind of a unisex, all age kind of thing. It could be board games, it can be a joke, it can be a gift card. It can vary a lot. we have so much fun with that because everybody wraps it up and we draw numbers, who's going to choose first and open a present. And then when you have opened it and the next person does the same thing that has taken the next number, then they can either take your gift or choose another one. Anyway, it gets to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of laughter. And I guess we have had stockings. And again, anybody's free to put anything in them that they want. But we also have tried to cultivate the idea that Christmas is about giving to others. So we've usually had one kind of big project, whether it's the Heifer Project or World Vision or AFSC, but kind of talk about what it means to be, what that project means and how it does help other people. And people are invited to participate by contributing or not. We just let them know that it's happening. I think this year it might be about the reforestation of Australia so that there's a habitat for koala bears. It varies a lot. Christmas is about family for us. And we did have a nativity scene, little figures. I remember when the children were little to try to get the idea of, what we were supposed to be celebrating. And I remember we had to buy a lot of little baby Jesuses because they kept disappearing. Our toddler loved to put them in her pocket and they would just sort of walk off. But Christmas has evolved for us. It's become a little more traditionally what our culture calls Christmas, only because of, I guess, peer pressure. But we've tried to maintain an emphasis on family and on giving to others, and more what we consider the real spirit of Christmas, not the commercialization of it.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Emily, you're a parent now. How do you celebrate Christmas?
Hi. So Christmas for me was very different than Ruth's. I'm a convinced Quaker, so I grew up in celebrating Christmas mostly as a secular holiday. My parents were not religious, but my broader family was. And so we did all the traditional things, in part living in New York. So we got to go look at the lights, and those are my fondest memories as a child. But once I got married, actually, Christmas, and I started having my own Christmas, I started really valuing the way that my family makes things. So my family is a bunch of makers. Both my grandfathers have made different kinds of Christmas decorations out of wood. They're both woodworkers. And then my mother was an artist, and she went through a phase where she made angels for everybody in the family. So the angel on my tree is always one that my mother made. She also made stockings for everybody in the family. And my mom passed away before my daughters were born. So my aunt picked up that tradition and made a stocking for each of my daughters using some of the leftover art that my mom had left in some of her stuff. And then when I was a really little child, she made these tiny Christmas ornaments of all of our toys when we were a kid. So my favorite doll when I was a child, my brother's favorite castle, they're all made into these little Christmas ornaments, and I still have them. And so for me, with my daughters and I today, we'll go out into my living room and we will put all that stuff out. My aunt also made us a nativity scene. I'm from New Mexico, and so she made it in a traditional New Mexico sort of style, and it has like an adobe manger. And so it's a time for me to connect with a lot of people in my family who are far away, and actually all of whom have actually passed away at this point. And so it's a point for me to also talk to my daughters about them. My mom also wrote a Christmas story. She about a little boy named Sam who had a garden, and Sam was the child of the innkeepers, and so he had this garden that suddenly bloomed on Christmas Eve and was able to feed all the people who came to see baby Jesus. And so every year we read that story. So it's really about kind of remembering our family and connecting back with family that especially because my daughters never got to meet my mom or my grandfathers. It's a chance for me to connect with them and share those stories. Otherwise, we do have a lot of the commercial elements of Christmas, that we buy presents. I grew up pretty poor, so Christmas was the only time I ever got anything that I wanted, not just what I really, really needed. So like giving presents has always had a big impact for me. However, we also traditionally have like a heifer gift. We use Heifer International, give out gifts like of chicks or goats or something to family as a part of this. And a couple of Christmases I've asked that to be my main present, is just donations, and that's also lovely to get.
Thank you. Hearing your comments, sort of weaving through it, is reference back to what the Quakers call testimonies, the core beliefs that sort of guide us in our daily life. And one of them is simplicity, and another is sustainability. How do you see that weaving through the way your family is celebrating Christmas now?
For me, those are both really important values. And I think we actually moved. I thought that being more sustainable was having a real tree, but I learned more that, if I'm going to have the same tree for the next 40 years, having one plastic tree is more sustainable. So we have the same tree every year. And, we try to be very limited in terms of how many lights we put up and things like that, to be cognizant of those kinds of impact. But, really it's about family, and trying not to produce too many things out of this time. We're really encouraged to consume a lot. And I think the simplicity comes in, there's a way that tradition can create a little bit, it can create complexity, but it also can create simplicity, in that we know what we're going to do every year. And there's a beauty to that. And my daughters and I and my husband all really enjoy being able to reconnect with each other in this way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ruth, did you want to add anything about simplicity and sustainability?
As I listened to Emily talk about the trees, I have to admit, I love the smell of a real tree. So we have never not had a real tree since we've had trees. But I always admired what my brother does. Of course, he was raised the same way I was, but he lives in Southern California, and he has for years, they had a little potted thing on their patio, which adjoins their living room. And they, I guess, planted had planted a little tree. And for years, every year they would bring it in. And then once the holiday was over, it went back out again. And I guess it got rather deformed looking with the years, but that didn't seem to dissuade them. They just love their little Christmas tree. I don't think they have it anymore. But I too very much appreciate our testimonies of simplicity and sustainability. And I think probably just trying not to get caught up in Black Fridays and buying lots of stuff and all of that has, first of all, I'm not a shopper. So it's very easy for me to do that. But also we've tried to discourage the family from doing that. Making gifts was always kind of encouraged. I can't say we were real successful with wonderful things, but somehow those are the things that, like Emily, that I've kept and valued, the things that were made. My father believed in voluntary poverty. Both of my parents were very idealistic. And I guess his philosophy was live simply that others may simply live. So it's just always been a part of me I don't know how to shop. I don't wear jewelry. It just doesn't feel right. It's not any kind of something I impose on myself. But as far as Christmas goes, maybe it's a wonderful excuse not to have to spend days and days shopping and trying to get the latest gift. I suppose we must have done a little of that when the children were younger, but I can remember, as far as siblings went, either making fudge for my brother and sending it, fudge with pecans. Pecans are a nut that grows in Oklahoma and is very much a part of our culture there. And he kind of complained when I stopped doing that. but our favorite thing is probably just exchanging gifts to AFSC and, with a card of acknowledgement. I find it a great relief to believe in simplicity. To me, it sort of ruins the spirit of the thing and puts a lot of pressure on when there's a feeling you need to get a gift for each person, and it's got to be the right thing. And I don't know, I can't do that.
Thank you so much for mentioning the American Friends Service Committee. That's the service branch for Friends here in the United States. It has programs both in the US and around the world, and many of them are very community oriented, focused on peace and justice in a variety of issues as reflecting the issues of the times. So thank you for mentioning AFSC. I used to work there. Let me shift to how do your meetings, Quakers use the term monthly meeting as opposed to a church. How do your meetings celebrate the holidays in terms of worship and fellowship and service? Emily?
So at Mickleton, we use it as a time to really come together as a community. We don't have a set program every year, but we have a program every year, and it's a time for us to share our talent, whatever that talent may be. And that's included. We used to have a poet in our meeting, Lester Heritage, and every year we read. He has 2 Christmas poems. We always read those, but then everybody just brings what they're good at, and that might be playing the piano, it might be reading, doing storybook reading, whatever that they want to share with each other. And then we, of course, as all good Quakers, we have a good spread of food at the end of it. and so it's really a time for us to connect together and enjoy. And we also use it as a time to recognize children. So whenever we have a baby born, that's the time that we kind of recognize them as being born. And then we usually have, some small, very Quaker oriented gift for all the children, just to recognize how much we value them in our meeting, because it's just having children in our meeting is such a blessing. And we want to make sure that they feel connected to us, and we want to remind them how much we value them.
Thank you. And Ruth?
It's our tradition at Haddonfield to the first day, Sunday of the December, we do something called Simple Gifts. And we have different people that will plan what the project might be and supply the materials and make things that people can give as simple gifts. Sometimes they're decorations, sometimes they're wonderful. I'm thinking of bookmarks that are colored in and just some really, really fun things. And hopefully some of them are appropriate then, that we put into a box that we take when a couple Sundays later, we go to used to be Cadbury, which is a continuing care community in Cherry Hill. I think lately it's Brandywine there in Haddonfield, but for some place that has older people. And there's a caroling and this is a big emphasis of this is with the children, but also with the adults, and sing and then pass out gifts. That's a wonderful time. I enjoy that so much. Partly to see the children grow up over the years and become more, just to see, I guess, our meeting aging. The other thing we always do is on Christmas Eve, we have a special kind of an evening that is traditionally made up of 3 parts. The first is about a half an hour of worship. And then we have Christmas carols. And then, as Emily alluded to, we have those wonderful, that spread of cookies and hot chocolate or whatever. That perhaps for me is one of my favorite parts of Christmas. You go and you see your people from the past, but you also see your friends and all of their extended family, because people have gathered by that time. And I just remember people's little toddlers out dancing in the middle of the floor while we were caroling. It's just such a spontaneous time of gathering together and sort of meeting each other's extended families. It's also tradition to have Christmas breakfast, but that's something that you have to be able to get up early for. So people but everybody brings a bread or I guess it's a bread. Was there not something else, a fruit? And then, but a committee makes the kind of traditional eggs and sausage and bacon or whatever. But the Christmas Eve celebration is especially meaningful to me. To watch my own family gather. I had my grandson and his husband come down from New York City by the way of 2 trains, the high-speed line, and then walk over to the Meetinghouse to join us and they time it so that they walk in just as we're beginning. It really means a lot, the gathering together of family and of meeting members and their families. And as far as the service goes, I guess the main thing would be, well, we also have a Christmas tree for gloves and mittens and hats to distribute to people. And that's always kind of, that's not nice to see in the foyer and realize that that's going for a meaningful project. There's probably a lot of things going on that I'm not even remembering, but I think service and giving are things that I've always hoped we could convey to our families, to our young ones.
Can I just add that in our first day school, we almost always have a project almost exactly like that, where we send cards or something else to Shady Lane, which is a nearby care facility, and so that's exactly the kind of thing we do too.
Yeah.
So in this year of COVID, how are your meetings adapting to COVID, and how do you think that may affect the Christmas holiday? Emily?
So we just made a decision last week that we wanted to continue to have some kind of gathering because we like to be with each other. And so we're going to be doing it virtually. My husband has always been the MC for the holiday gathering, so he's going to MC it. And we're asking for fewer contributions or shorter contributions because Zoom is a little harder, but we're going to have people come and share their talents. And then added to that, we are organizing a cookie exchange so we can have the food too. So people who are willing to cook cookies are going to be making them and distributing them to people who or people who do or don't make them themselves. And so we'll be able to share some food together at the end of it.
I think we also are doing our Christmas Eve get-togethers on virtually, is what I understand. I can't imagine that it would be as much fun, but our meetings for worship have been wonderful on Zoom, and so it may surprise me, but I know we're not having our Christmas breakfast. I think I guess I'm not aware of any other things that we're doing. We're not doing simple gifts this year, I'm sure.
Well, thank you both very much for sharing your Christmases past and present. So I want to thank you again, Ruth Podolin and Emily Blanck. I'd also like to thank Carlton Crispin, who's recording and will be editing this video for us for the southjerseyquakers.org. Thank you again and happy holidays.